The first time I heard real rock music, it was Soft Machine, and I just thought it was the most exciting sound I'd ever heard. Poppy, who I was with last night or the night before, John Hopkins, he asked us to come and do a performance of Earth, Air, Fire and Water at this club called UFO. We'd never been there before, we had never been to any of those kind of clubs before. In fact, I don't think there was another one. Every night there would be some kind of theatre performance, someone would do a play, poets would read their poems. But the night we were asked to do our piece with our own sound, which was the sound of the earth. And I always remember it ended with a particular sequence of light show and just the sound of the wind howling. And that was the end of the piece. And Hoppy came to us and said, fantastic, it was very well received and fantastic. And would you be prepared to stay on for the rest of the night and do the lights with our sound? I said, sure, it'd be wonderful, you know. And we agreed £10 was the price, which later we realised was ridiculous because it didn't pay for the light bulbs that we used up in the course of the night. The first band that came up was Soft Machine, and while they were playing, I noticed that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were in the audience. Then this guy jumped up on the stage and started to jam in with them. And at the end of the set, a couple of guys from Soft Machine came up and asked us if we travel with them as well to other gigs. I said, yeah, sure, thinking I won't be able to teach any longer, and that's great. I'd far rather work with these guys and do a light show than teach in an art school. And I said, who was the guy that got up on the stage with me? He said, you won't have heard of him. He's just joined our management. He's called Jimi Hendrix. And that was a great night. And ever since then, I've listened to them all. We've worked with a lot of the best bands from that time. Cream, The Animals, Hendrix, and Soft Machine's the best. Not just the best, it's the most interesting one of all, because they all seem to come from completely different backgrounds. I wasn't really so interested in Dave Allen, who's into a kind of fantasy world that I didn't understand really. But it seemed to me that Mike Ratledge was a classical musician. He was probably the greatest keyboards player in the world at the time. Robert Wyatt was a jazz drummer, and he was described in Village Voice when we were over there as the greatest jazz drummer in the world. I think it went to his head a wee bit. I think he never forgot that. Whereas Kevin, as somebody said, as the manager said, Kevin just wants to be a pop musician, and he's really interested in 2 plastic ducks and a yacht. I don't know what he meant. But I've always felt fantasized, maybe, but nevertheless there was something in it, that every performance was a battle between these 3 influences, the pop, the jazz, and the classical music. It went on. That was the great thing about Soft Machine. You went on having that experience. It wasn't just the first time, because every time there was something completely new, there was some amazing change in the thing that just blew your head away.
The first work of note you did together, or the first major thing, was touring actually up and down England.
That's right. It wasn't like
'67.
It wasn't like a continuous tour. We would just go from London up to Hull or Manchester or something, and then back that night.
I heard, I think it was members of the band saying that the reception in some of the more provincial towns was sometimes very hostile, to their music at least.
The only hostility I ever heard, well, it was hardly hostility. I didn't interpret it as hostility. I could understand maybe the guy was hostile. When we did a performance at the Edinburgh Festival with them, with some dancers, and there was a lot of troubles because they wanted money, the dancers, and we knew there wasn't going to be any money. So they got all the money that was available. The Soft Machine got nothing and we got nothing. But so there was a little bit of thing about that. But I can remember someone coming out of the performance and grabbing me and saying, "What is it? What is it? I can't bear it, but I can't take my eyes away. I couldn't leave." What was happening, you know? I think it was very new, and they were all into Beatles. Everyone in England was. I can remember in one of the clubs they claimed that you couldn't dance to Soft Machine because they kept changing the rhythm, and I said, why would you want to dance to a constant rhythm? I mean, you change with it, don't you? So those were the complaints. That it was too loud, that the rhythm wasn't continuous, and Robert kept changing it, and so you couldn't dance to it. And I said, anyway, people don't dance to it, they just listen to it. And increasingly that became what happened.
Was their music more freeform than it became later at that stage, or there was an element of straight pop actually in their music in the beginning, as well as completely freeform?
I think both of it. That was what I was talking about when I said it was the clash between these three elements: the pop, the jazz, and Ratledge, who was he was a serious pianist as well as being a great keyboards player. I mean, he did a concert, as you probably know, they did a concert at the Proms where he did the first half playing American contemporary music.